Terror on Full Moon Farms is the most recent narrative project I made a few months ago. Why did I wait so long to make a behind the scenes video? Well, the truth is I needed some time away from the project. A lot of time. Let's get into it. At the beginning of August, I heard about a local horror film competition where contestants had 1 month to make a short film from start to finish. I signed myself up because, 1, I love horror films.
Truly.
2, I thought it would be fun to do one of these again because I used to do a bunch of timed film competitions in high school as part of Skills USA. If you know, you know. 3, it had been over a year since I made anything narrative, so I thought this would be an excellent exercise to work that filmmaking muscle. When I signed up, I knew Sierra would help with producing and take the role of the assistant director, and that my buddy, who I competed in skills projects with, Diego, would compose the music for the film. We got our prompt, and no joke, it was exactly what I was dreading and hoping it would be. A creature feature. I grew up watching a ton of monster movies as a kid, but none of them resonated with me on a deeper level as much as The Wolfman starring Lon Chaney Jr. The story of a caring, sweet man turning into a horrible monster when the full moon rose was intriguing for me and gave me an insightful look at the horror coming from the monster's perspective.
I killed Richardson. If I stay around here much longer, you can't tell who's gonna be next.
So when we got this genre, my immediate reaction was, we're making a werewolf flick. I'd been wanting to make a full-fledged werewolf short for a while and realized this would be great practice for that. If I could direct a straightforward and cheap scene with a few deaths and a werewolf, it would better prepare me for when the day comes that I spend a lot more money on a film with those same aspects. The bad news is that I made many mistakes on this project that led me to my lowest point in my filmmaking journey thus far. The good news is, I made many mistakes on this project that led me to my lowest point in my filmmaking journey. With 4 weeks to make the film, the original plan I made a month prior was to spend a week and a half on pre-production, an entire weekend on production, and 2 weeks for post. This slowly turned into 2.5 weeks of pre-production, 2 days to film, and around a week of post. And by post, I mean all the VFX, music scoring, sound work, and color had to be done in a week while still meeting some strict freelance deadlines I had. The first significant problem we ran into was the location. I first envisioned filming the scene at a cornfield maze and staging a small fall festival right outside it. While trying to find this location, I quickly realized why Nolan grew an entire cornfield for Interstellar. Well, maybe not the only reason, but it is tough to find a cornfield maze in Dallas. Because we were nearing Halloween season, I thought there would be pumpkin patches open to letting us film inside their corn maze. Unfortunately, they all said no for various reasons. At this point, we were already nearing our first shoot date, which we had to push. With the new production dates approaching, I decided to change it into the woods because that would likely be easier to find, so I thought. It turns out that finding some big enough land that could pass as the woods that also had nearby electricity was way more difficult than I imagined. Thankfully, I put out a post on Facebook asking for help, and this lovely lady named Janet helped me find someone cool with letting us film on his property throughout the entire night. Unfortunately, this place was 90 minutes away from the city, which started a chain reaction that spiraled us down to a messy shoot. So filming that far out from the city and changing the shooting date at the last minute led to us losing some crew members, and the few that were left had something come up and wouldn't be able to join us for production. I found this out 24 hours before we were scheduled to start the first shot, and because it was so last second, no one else I knew was free or felt safe driving 2 hours for an all-night shoot. So the crew now consisted of Sierra and me, and my little brother who I totally didn't force to record audio. I've worked with a small team many times. For example, all of our shorts have had like 3 or 5 people acting as crew, but having no dedicated help moving lights in a pitch black location led Sierra and I to do it ourselves, which was way more draining than I expected. First, there is that constant struggle of running back to the camera, checking the frame, and making final adjustments. In addition, we'd be significantly behind schedule by the time we would be ready to shoot, which meant I had to quickly figure out how to combine or cut shots from an already condensed shot list. Problem B ended up being the werewolf itself. We had our cast ready, but I guess the werewolf role was cursed because every time we found an actor, something would go wrong. One of them having to exit the project 3 days prior for a really serious reason. Then the person we cast 2 days before the shoot date had to drop the project around an hour before starting the makeup process for valid reasons that simply came from harmless communication mistakes regarding it being an overnight shoot. Now, I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, like, it's just a movie. Instead, I want to be transparent so that other filmmakers can learn from my mistakes. Thank goodness though, because my friend Diego, who I mentioned earlier, was heading to set to visit, so like I've always done since high school, I asked him to step into a role at the last possible second. A part that consisted of having him wear contacts for the first time, be in makeup for a few hours, work all night in prosthetics, and on top of all that, act like a dog. So, props to Diego for always coming in the nick of time. But you wanna know what the biggest mistake was? And I absolutely take full responsibility because Sierra, being the great AD that she is, tried to warn me about it, but I didn't listen. To start, we had never been to this location. I had seen a handful of pictures, but that was it. Instead of arriving and immediately going out to scout where we would shoot everything, I started unpacking equipment and setting everything up, including the 2 cameras, tables, monitors, audio, etc. Then we got the news about the whole wolf situation, and by the time I started to scout the area, there were 20 minutes left before it got pitch black. And let me remind you, we were out in the country, so we couldn't see anything unless we had a light. This was my biggest mistake off the bat. I could have set equipment and tables up in the dark, but what I couldn't do was walk around and have a comprehensive look at potential filming locations. At one point, I attempted to walk out and figure out where we would move to, but I couldn't get a good look even with my brightest battery-powered light. At this point in the night, we had finished filming the first scene. I was aching from having to move lights around, I was running off a few hours of sleep since I had to pack and charge everything the night prior. I was worried about the sound quality because we couldn't get the boom close enough due to branches. Things out of my control felt like they were going wrong left and right, and finally I broke. I had this overwhelming sensation of failure and felt like a fool for ever thinking I could pursue film. I was standing in the middle of this location, alone and in the dark, so then I called over Sierra and told her, I think this is it. I don't think I can do this, and I don't even know why I ever thought I could do this. I can't honestly remember when I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker. All I know is that since I was first handed a camera, I've wanted nothing else but to tell stories through film. So this moment in the woods was the first time I ever questioned throwing in the towel for a project. Thankfully, Sierra quickly helped me snap out of it through some words of encouragement. It was also helpful to give myself a minute, look up at the cloudy night sky, and reflect on how far we've come, and that just because it felt impossible at the moment didn't mean it was true, which is what Nightgaze is all about. It's that feeling that even if the stars are being blocked from view, it doesn't mean they're not there, because past those clouds are a limitless amount of possibilities waiting to be discovered. People were willing to help, some who weren't getting paid much and some who did it out of a simple favor. If I had canceled the shoot, I would have never forgiven myself and always wondered how the film would have turned out if I had just pushed through. So I pulled myself back together, I thought of all my favorite directors who have gone through hell and back to get their films made, and then I chugged a few energy drinks. What helped us in the end is I decided that we couldn't move anywhere from where we were at anymore. We were too behind on time, so we would film everything in a small section of land where the 100-foot cable extensions were easiest to access. Then, to try and make the exact locations look different, I would reverse the intensity of the lights. Another beneficial factor was having 2 cameras ready. One rigged up to quickly attach it to the easy rig and another one balanced on the gimbal. We got all the shots we needed right as the sun rose. As I made the road trip back, barely being able to keep my eyes open, I felt proud that we had made it. Even if it's the worst film of all time and everyone hates it, we left that night with 85% of the scene shot. Against all odds, we flipped off Murphy's Law and didn't let it stop us from making movies. By the way, that morning I had a wedding to film, so I went home, showered, took a 30-minute nap, then made another hour trip to film a 10-hour wedding. So what were the biggest mistakes for this project? Well, one being too ambitious for the location with very little pre-production time, especially since we didn't have any unique connections to anyone who owned land. In the future, if a site is too far and we have to work with a low budget, it may be best to find a new location, even if it means changing the script. That way, it's more likely that if we have to call in last-minute favors for crew positions, they'll be more likely to help even if it's just for a few hours, because of a more reasonable and safer commute time. That leads us to number 2, not having a bigger crew. If we had at least one more person capable of moving stuff around, that would have at least freed me so I could focus on the blocking or lighting more. Sierra and I were wearing too many hats, and that deeply affected us in many aspects of the film. Not just physically either, it was truly a mental test of endurance. Number 3, the biggest one, not taking the time to properly walk around and figure everything out before unpacking a single thing. If I had immediately gone around and marked where we would move the camera, that would have made for a much more efficient shoot, giving us an estimate of where lights and cables would need to be moved. And also would have resulted in more pleasing images and camera movements, since we would have been able to stay closer to the storyboard. I learned a million other smaller lessons, but I'm not trying to make a 3-hour-long video about my f***ups. I'll save that for my first feature. I just wanted to share the 3 big ones that I hope will be useful for you in any way possible. I've talked about things that went wrong, but there were a lot of great moments during this project. To summarize the good things, we found a great makeup artist. Rachel did such an excellent job with the creature effects. It was a dream to have someone with her talent be a dedicated effects artist on set. In the past, we've had Sierra do makeup and AD. Before that, I was the one doing the creature effects. But completely letting go of that was the greatest thing ever. It was also quite surreal to be talking to Diego, hear his voice, then turn around and see this. Even though the locations were challenging, we filmed at this fantastic little amusement park, which got us some of that production value! This place was 90 minutes away, and they allowed us to film around the other guests at the park, which of course resulted in people just standing and watching, even though we had a camera pointed right towards them. We only had around 3 hours to film the opening and ending scenes. Even though it was highly stressful, it was the best kind of stress we could have while making a film. There was a lot of running, get the shot, okay, move on, and try to beat the clock. An absolute blast and one of the most rewarding shooting days so far in my career. Number 3. Working with Diego on the first thing he has ever scored was really fun. He was so into the zone that he got back into character for the scoring sessions. Number 4, considering all the things that went wrong in the 1-month time crunch, what we did is pretty impressive for where I'm at, the lack of crew, and our budget. Also, as a reminder, I say 1 month, but I had other shoots and edits that needed to get done at that time. So it's not like it was a whole month purely dedicated to that project. And lastly, all the actors were superb, patient, and hilarious to be with. Like, legitimately, Morgan, Tanner, Joey, and Nick were such good people to be around. Even when they knew things weren't going as planned, I got nothing but optimistic vibes from them. The little moments when you finish a take and everyone is so excited to see how it's turning out and are pumped to film the next scene remind me why I love making films so much. It's just this indescribable feeling that we're all there to make some art, and that's pretty cool. I had to take some time off after we turned in the film because I felt mentally destroyed juggling this project and my tight freelance schedule. Throughout 99% of post-production, I felt like I had just made the worst short in film history. Months later, I'm proud this movie even got made and can appreciate the outcome more. I'm a better filmmaker now than I was before the project was started, and that's always the goal. Speaking of goals, what did I achieve with this film? Well, I made a horror film with a friggin' werewolf. Regardless of everything, it was a fun experience to work under the competition's time limits, even though I probably won't do it again anytime soon. And we made a friggin' movie. For a second, I thought 2021 would be the first year I didn't make a narrative, so I'm thrilled we created something spooky and got to learn a ton. I'm so happy that we made all these mistakes, and I wouldn't alter anything from the past if given the opportunity to use Doc Brown's DeLorean. My goals for each film are not only to make the best film possible, but to learn as much as I can so I can progress as a filmmaker. I didn't learn nearly as many things on our second, smoother production day as I did on our first. Now, I feel even more prepared to tackle bigger budget shorts because if I can do this without a lot of money or help, I can hopefully make something awesome once I take the risk of spending my savings on a project. Plus, on top of all this, if I went back in time, this would have made my 6th grade self freak out. But like, seriously, this is what I was making, and I thought it was the epitome of cinema. So, that's awesome. Finally, as a late thank you gift to everyone who helped make this movie, I got these made by my good friend Zak Dennis from Cinemarama. And yes, they have the film and some other goodies tailored to each person. I'm not sure what my next short will be. Currently, I'm working towards making a pricey short I'm passionate about. Until then, the goal is to make some more episodes of Final Picture, which are really fun and educational to make, but take up such a significant amount of time from my already busy schedule. There are also talks about making another smaller sized film this summer. I've made at least one short every year since I was 8 years old, so we'll see what happens this year. Fingers crossed that by early 2023, we'll have the budget to start pre-production on that one passion project. By the way, we got 4th place.